Hello everyone, it's Carol here at Aakash Journals. Big warm welcome from me, and I'm going to do the 50 stack challenge today, and I'm going to do prompt number 37, which was flower. So here's my guess check with a little bit of lightweight card on the back to reinforce it. I'm going to be using this very lightweight cardstock, about 120 grams, and as you can see it's plain on the back. And I'm also going to be using this one as well, which also is plain on the back. And this is the image that I'm going to be using. And I also have here some beautiful voile in a dusky pink colour that I might be using, and then this lovely one as well. Now this is verging on almost a soft peachy colour, but they do, I think, go together quite nicely because this is so soft and delicate, and this is some very lightweight chiffon. These are 6x6 in size, which is a little bit smaller than the guest check, but what I thought I would do is cut this at 3 inches, which would give me a slight white border of the original guest check showing all the way round. And I thought that I would stitch in that white border just to try and pull it together and make it look like that is a design feature rather than my paper not being the right size. And this one, I'm not going to cut this one at 3 inches. I'm actually going to fold this one at 3 inches. So let's go ahead and get that done, and you'll see where I'm going with this one. I've actually put a little wee mark up there at 3 inches. So I'm just going to cut this along that mark and just offer it up to my guest check just to check. And as you can see, it just about covers everything. It's absolutely perfect. So that's that done. And for this piece of paper, I'm just going to score this at 3 inches. And as you can see, it's a 6-inch piece of paper. I'm just going to move that slightly across. So I'm just going to score it in half down there. And fold it. And I actually have just a very, very minuscule border there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to level that off. Okay. That's going to go on there like that. This one is going to go over the top, and it should be exactly the same size. It's marginally smaller because I've snipped off that little bit. Actually, it's not even noticeable. And I'm going to glue this one, this top one, shut, but not quite yet, because what I want to do is I want to attach this piece to my guest check and stitch all the way around and have that as my background. But before I glue this down and before I glue this shut, I want to create a hinge that will go inside this one and underneath this one. Okay, so I'm going to go away to my machine and I'm going to stitch all the way around the outside of my guest check and create my hinge, and then I will be back. I've stitched all the way around the outside of my guest check, and now I'm just going to smooth the stitching down on the reverse with my bone folder. Give it a good press down, and then this piece will sit perfectly inside that stitching, and I'm really happy with that. So I was toying with the idea of actually stitching this background piece, but I'm not. I think that's going to be too fussy as the stitching is going to be very close together. I am going to stitch all the way round this piece, and I'm going to do it before I actually glue it together and create the hinge. And the reason for that is so that I can have the neat stitching all the way round on this piece showing on both sides, because the reverse stitching will obviously be in there. But before I do that, I'm just going to snip away the corners, get rid of those bits. So now I'm going to take it away to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch all the way round. This piece is now stitched all the way round, and as you can see I've brought the stitching down either side of the fold, and everywhere else I've gone over with 2 lines of stitching. So that's what it looks like on the front, and that's what it looks like on the reverse. And I've already gone round this, giving it a really good burnish all the way round with my bone folder, and I've also gone over this central fold as well, really to make sure it's going to lie nice and flat. This was my background piece, as you saw earlier, and I've glued it down, but for the last probably 3/4 of an inch down here, so I can slide my hinge underneath that very easily. So this is my image, or the one that I wanted to use, but I'm going to use this bottom portion of the page to create my hinge. So I'm just going to chop across the bottom here. And this is probably bigger than I'm going to need, but we'll see. And the reason I'm using this is because it's scrap paper, but also because it's a good quality paper. It's got a slight plastic coating on it. It's white and it will blend in quite nicely with my piece. And I'm just going to offer up half of it in there, like so, and fold it over. And I know that that is the right size for my hinge now. So I'm just going to trim that off. And this I'm going to glue. So let's just do that. Get my hinge, pop it inside like that. Close it up, making sure my hinge, or the bottom of this tag, is right up to that fold line that I created on my hinge. Now I'm just going to burnish this all to make sure it's nicely glued. Flip it over. I'm going to do the other side as well. So I'm just going to reinforce that fold in the hinge. Now I'm going to glue this portion of the hinge in the bottom here. Get my hinge, pop it onto the bottom there, and just fold it up so that it is glued nicely in place, like that. Sure it's all nicely lined up. There we go. So there is my tag, nicely hinged to the front of my my guest check. And I've just got a slight edge here, so I'm just going to trim that. Yep, there we go. And I've got a thread on the back here, so I'm just going to give that a trim as well. There we go. Right, so this, as I've mentioned, was the image that I want to use. So I'm going to go away now and fussy cut that out. I thought that I would just have it off to the right hand side a little bit, and this was the name that was underneath the image, and I've just kind of roughly torn that out as best I can to give a kind of organic edge to it. I've torn a little bit of this lovely chiffon fabric. If I just open that up, you can see where I've torn it from there, and I've got this little piece here. And what I thought I would do is just fold it in half and just have it off the edge of the tag, but almost touching on this side, and then just have that little bit below the fold with all the fraying peeping out. So I'm going to glue all this in place now. now I'm just going to come in with my ribbon scissors and I'm going to cut along that fold that I made in the fabric. Now just grab a little bit of the edging and allow it to fray. There we go, so that's my tag on the front of my piece, like that. And I've not decided yet whether I want to put an eyelet up here or not. I will think about that in a moment. But what I want to do is I want to create a little pocket in here. So for inside, I was thinking about creating a little pocket, and initially I thought I would make something along the lines of this little one here, which, as you can see, is just made out of dyed vellum. And I thought I would pop that in there like that and then put some little die cuts inside. And because it's made out of vellum, it's not going to be too thick for when I close this up. But then I was looking in my other scraps of vellum and I saw this and I thought actually that could be very nice in there if I rough cut or tore roughly round the edges and use that. That would be very delicate in there and there would be no bulk at all. So I really did like that. And then I spotted this, which is a scrap of an old vellum envelope, and this is perfect for several reasons. It's got green on it down here, it's got some gold embossing here, heat embossing, which gives a point of interest, and also it's got a flower on here, and the flower is the right colour for these pieces down here. So I'm going to park that idea for another day, pop that back with my stash of vellum scraps for another day too, and I'm going to work on this. This I think is too tall to have it in there like that, so I'm going to cut it across here and glue it in place. So let's do that. And as you can see, it's open here, and then I've got some reinforcing bits at the back there. So the first thing I need to do, obviously it's the right width for what I want. It's not going to be too bulky. I'm going to just glue down this edge here, and then that can go in there. Now obviously, because this is quite a thick vellum and I've got a couple of areas of reinforcing, what I could do is glue it on three sides and create a double pocket there, but I don't think I want to do that, so I'm going to glue the whole of the back. And I'm just going to position it just centered and about 3-4 millimeters off the bottom where the fold is down there. Give that a little bit of encouragement with my bone folder. Oh, and I've touched that heat embossing a bit too roughly with my bone folder and it's pulled it away. So I've got a tiny scrap here of this paper, so I could put a piece across the bottom there, and I think I'll do that. And luckily, with there being no bulk there, adding this little bit of cardstock to it is not going to increase the bulk too much. So I'm just going to pop that across there like that, so that it looks like it was meant to be. And I've got a little sentiment here that I'm going to put over the top. It's a little washy sentiment, so it will partially pick up the colour from behind. And there's just one thing left to finish off this piece. Using the same paper, I've used this die, Sizzix die, to do some die cuts of flowers, and I'll put the description of this in the description box below the video as always. And I went in and coloured some of the pieces, not this particular one because obviously I've picked up the rose here on the top of my die cut, but lower down I've gone in and used some felt tip pen just to colour the rest of the die cut. And similarly with this one was all pink, and I've just used a little bit of pink in places and a little bit of green just to give a hint of colour. And I'm going to pop these in this little pocket at the bottom. Pop this one in as well, tuck it in behind, something like that. And I don't want them really to be seen when that's closed, so I think I will just put a dab of glue behind these in one or two places. So on this one I'm going to put a dab of glue on there just so that it will hold it over to the left hand side like that. Maybe a little bit more on this piece. Let's maybe see what this one looks like just tucked in behind. Yeah, I prefer that one. So I'm just going to glue this one in place. Yeah. So I'm liking that, and I'm just wondering if I can make use of this one down here somewhere. Yeah, I'm actually quite liking that, so I'm going to take away that bit. Here we go, everybody. I've decided that rather than leave this to flip open, I didn't want to put an eyelet up there, so I'm going to use one of the little mini Tim Holtz paper clips, just have it over the top like that. And I've got in my little scrap pot here some tiny pieces of voile that have got little dots on, so I thought I would just use those to add a little finishing touch to the top of this piece. So I'm just going to knot a couple of pieces at the top of the paper clip like that. I'm not going to pull them too tight, but I am going to snip them down a little bit like that. And I'm just going to use that on the top. There we go, just like that, just to try and soften it up a little bit. So there we go, everybody, that's my finished piece for today. This was number 37, and the prompt for this one was flower. So I have my die cut flower on the top here with a Latin description of what it is, backed onto that lovely almost pale pink peachy coloured chiffon, so it's a gladioli of some sort. I stitched all the way around my tag, and then I've got my paper clip at the top. This flips down, I've got my hinge hidden down there, got a little bit of lifting there, so I'm just going to put a dab of glue. I've got my little vellum pocket here, and then tucked into it and glued down actually now, I've got all these little die cut pieces which I cut from the same paper but then went over with my felt tip pens just to add some more colour. And as always, everybody, I'll put some photographs at the end for you to see. And then my background is just glued on, and I've just stitched round the edge with a single straight stitch on my sewing machine. So a very simple one again this week, but I quite like how this one looks, and that's the back as you saw a second or two ago. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I need to put my thinking cap on now and think what I can do for prompt number 38, and the prompt for that guest check was a form. So let's see what I can come up with for that one. Until the next video, everybody, take care. Bye bye now.